Gascogne was destined to be the last of the Richelieu-class battleships. Originally, the Richelieu and Jean Bart had been response to the Littorios, but since then, Germany had started work on the Bismarck class, and so two more battleships would be needed to match them. These would be Clemenceau and Gascogne. But French naval infrastructure was a bit tied up. Between the first two Richelieus and the carrier Joffre, all the big warship slipways were occupied, and so in the time that would be needed to clear them, the French decided to re-evaluate the design of the Richelieus to see if it could be improved to face off against newer threats. These studies were to look at the layout of the quad turrets, investigate an alternate, more conventional triple turret layout like the Littorios and the new American battleships, and also look into revised possibilities for the secondary batteries, as neither the Dunkirk's 130mm guns nor the work ongoing on the Richelieu's dual-purpose 152mm secondaries was working especially brilliantly. For Clemenceau, the changes were relatively minor. The main battery stayed in place, and starting from the intended 5 triple 6-inch turrets on the Richelieus, one was moved to the centre line and the other eliminated, giving the same 9-gun secondary broadside with one less turret and freeing up some space for more dual-purpose 100mm twin mounts. For Gascogne, however, things were much different. The main battery remained as 2 quad 15-inch turrets, as the triple turret designs were far too heavy to fit within the 35,000-ton weight limit, which was something that seemed very odd looking at the ostensibly 35,000-ton Littorios, but the designers shrugged and moved on. Instead, the plan was to relocate one of the quad turrets aft, resulting in a single quad at each end. The triple 6-inch turrets were further reduced down to 3, but now 2 took superfiring positions roughly where the second quad turret had once been, and the third found itself superfiring over the relocated quad turret aft, which meant that there was still a 9-gun broadside despite now having been reduced by 2 turrets down from the original 5 on the Richelieu layout. 16 dual-purpose 100mm guns in 8 twin mounts, 4 to a side, were included, along with 12 37mm cannon in 6 twin mounts, 3 to a side, 2 forward of the 100mm battery, and 1 a deck higher adjacent to the aft 100mm mounts. Whilst it might seem easy to disregard the 37mm guns that hadn't been ready in time for the Richelieus, this would be a mistake. They were in fact very advanced weapons that had won a competition against no less than the 40mm Bofors. On the one hand, they took up a lot more space, but on the other, they were fully automatic, remote-controlled, and came with their own fire control directors, meaning there would be little problem with flash or vibration for extended firing, and of course, far superior rangefinders and sights. The loaders were actually a deck down, feeding 6-round clips into a conveyor system to ensure continued fire. Typically, a pair of these twin mounts would be tasked to a single fire control position, and apart from the bulk of the system, the only other downside was extreme barrel wear, to the point that it was likely they'd have to replace the barrels of the mounts after every major anti-aircraft engagement. The reason for the 2 completely different designs was that it was hoped to start on Clemenceau once Richelieu's hull was completed, and this would, theoretically at least, be relatively soon. Jean Bart's hull would take much longer to finish, and so the more radical redesign work for Gascogne could be completed in time. As it was, Richelieu's completion was so delayed that both ships could have been started to Gascogne's design, but of course they didn't know that at the time. Armour and speed were broadly the same as Richelieu's, with a fractionally thinner main belt and main turret thickness to compensate in part for the need to slightly lengthen the citadel, but the ships had overall better protection for the secondary battery. The aircraft facilities were initially supposed to be located amidships, similar to a King George V class, as there was concern about blast effects from the rear main turret on the former mounting of the aircraft aft as per the Richelieu. However, this forced the 37mm and 100mm guns too close together to have good fields of fire, and the catapult was eventually moved back aft with measures taken to secure it against blast. One of these measures being shuffling the superstructure and machinery spaces slightly forward into some of the space that had been vacated by the relocated main turret, which meant that the Now, aft turret too could be pulled slightly forward, and overall blast right aft could be reduced. The other factor was an internal hangar with a lift, so that the aircraft could be under the main deck when not being launched or recovered, an arrangement that was found in the Italian Littorio class as well, for pretty much the same reasons. Initial orders for the ship's long lead items were placed in June 1939, but work was suspended at the end of September due to the outbreak of war. This didn't resume until April 1940, and a program of keel laying in the summer of 1940 was to be followed by a launch in 1942 and commissioning in mid-1944. But by June 1940, due to the invasion of France, work was stopped again and would never be restarted.
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.